if the US can detect someone on the hit list in Yemen and can follow him going to his elite girlfriend's home, why doesn't the US bomb him on his way? Why do they drop a bomb on the entire residential building? Am I asking the wrong question?
It starts with people in West Asia. It starts with the Syrians, the Iraqis, the Lebanese, the Palestinians. It starts with that. That's when it normalizes in people's minds. And then it will transfer to everybody who is an enemy. And before you know, the dark ages that we live in now are even darker.
I think it's going to be normalized nowadays that people come to an airport and they confiscate your electronics, they suck your data, and probably install some software in it to spy on you.
Europe rather completely destroys itself for the United States than to say, you know what, the United States is destroying us, we're going to look eastwards.
One time I was sitting with a politician, and he's from the center-right party, Free Democratic Union. And he told me his wife is Ukrainian, and they were talking about the tragedies in Ukraine and how Putin is bad and how he's dropping bombs over the hospitals and schools, etc. And I listened to and I sympathized with it, until the end. When they finished the conversation, like 10 minutes, I just listened. I asked him, so what do you think about what Israel is doing to the Palestinians in Gaza? Because what you literally told me is like 10 times falling in Gaza. And he said, no, with Israel, he said, even if Israel is committing genocide, we have to stand with Israel. Literally.
All human beings had wars and domination. But I think Western society and the global nature of imperialism is uniquely evil in this world, because it co-evolved with a culture of profit and capitalism, which draws the worst out of people, really the worst. I mean, it's not so surprised that China is able to become as powerful, economically successful as the United States without military bases, without imperialism. In other words, it's a different system where you get social welfare. But the Western imperialist system is the whole world needs to live in abject poverty, destruction, hell, for the West to have its wealth and profit, and in particular for the upper class in the West, because the poor in the West are also often forgotten. Okay, good day, everyone. We are here again with our good friend Kevork Almassian of Syriana Analysis. I thought we will talk a bit about the things that are going on in West Asia. We do regularly a bit of an update with you. It's been a short while now. And indeed, we are living in very, very harrowing times, terrible times to see what's going on with your country, Syria. And I can see also in many of your posts that this stuff is really, really getting to you, that it's something that is very, very soul-crushing, you could say, and I can completely imagine that. So I wanted to talk a little bit with you about that. And I think the times that we are in right now really show the true face of the world that we are in, but also of the Western Empire, you could say. Today, very coincidentally, my co-host Peter was at a seminar at our university, and there was a very well-known academic, and that academic showed a quote from a Jamaican psychiatrist, and I want to start with that quote, because it's so fitting for the times that we are living right now. And this Jamaican psychiatrist said, and I quote, "Major aspects of European civilization will come to be seen as the monstrously evil constructions of dangerously deranged people, totally concerned by their narcissistic egotism and dominated by delusions of power and control." And I found that such a fitting statement. And I also agree. I think that future generations, let's say a couple of 100 years in the future, maybe even longer, will look back on this time as one of the darkest moments of human history. We are now often talking about the dark ages, in close to the Middle Ages and that kind of stuff. I think we are now in the past 500 to 1,000 years in the darkest time of human history. It's so depraved, things that are going on. And I want to ask you right now, Kevork, how are you doing? That's number one. And number two, can you update us a little bit about what is going on with your country, Syria?
Thank you very much for having me. It is, for me, it's beyond heartbreaking what's happening in the region. I just want to give your respected audience a context. Yes, it is true. 110 years ago, my family came to Syria as a refugee. But when I opened my eyes, I was born in Syria and I studied in Syria and I worked in Syria. I socialized with the Syrians. I drank from the Syrian water. I ate the Syrian food. I spoke their language like a mother tongue. And when I was a child, my father always educated me to love this country because the people of this country have saved my grandparents from the Armenian genocide. And he always told me that we have to respect the military. Like when you see a checkpoint of a military, you give them, let's say, your salute. My father served in the military during the Muslim Brotherhood uprising in the 80s. So additionally, he always told me like we have a debt to the Syrian people, which is they saved us from these massacres. So I am loyal to the people in Syria. And when I see what's happening to the people, I feel like I have a responsibility to shed light on the tragedy. I don't have anything to gain personally from this. In the contrary, I lose when I speak about these cases. So it's not like something I'm generating money or fame. In the contrary, it is something that causes smear campaigns, something that makes you lose money, opportunities, scholarships. But when I see that a considerable number of the people in Syria, they have been manipulated to believe that this is for their own good, right? You start to feel like you're talking into a void. Now, the political events and the security events in the region, in my opinion, are very strong, and the people's ability to change the realities are very tiny. And then you have someone, a talking head like myself, just trying to, show the people that there are two sides in every story so that they can make up their mind. But then when the political realities hit and changes happen and you see that the people are celebrating, for me, this is something like a drunk person who is celebrating now and then the second day he is in hangover. And this is what I believed when the regime change happened. Not because I'm foreseeing the future, but in political science, you know better than myself. You have historical events and you see patterns and you see outcomes of similar actions. Therefore, when Syria is not much different of Iraq, yes, there are differences between Syria and Iraq, but socially, Iraq was also divided, let's say, ethnic, Kurds, Arabs, Shia, Sunni, etc. And you see what comes next when the central government collapses and the military is gone. It's a complete chaos. So you will need a few years for new realities to form. And now, when I see the situation in Syria, regime change happened. Okay. The alternative is the founder of the Al-Qaeda offshoot in Syria. The Syrian military capabilities are completely decimated and destroyed. Turkey is occupying from the north, Israel is occupying from the south, Americans are in the east, the Russians are in the west, and the Syrians are lost in these equations, in this conflict of interests over the country. But what disappoints me is the lack of learning from the very, very recent experiences. Like when I see what happened in Iraq and Libya and the division of Sudan, civil war in Lebanon, and you try to, I don't like to say educate because it comes from a patronizing position, like I know better, But this is like it's my education and it's my job. Like I'm privileged to be able to build an online business from these conflicts, which means I spend most of my day reading articles, reading opinions of different people and making up my mind. But most people are busy with their work or they are suffering to secure a bread. That's why I'm trying to reach these people. But nowadays, it is the situation is so hopeless that I believe that I can just sit and watch what's going to happen next. Meanwhile, the US, Israel, Russia. Russia is this in the same bed now with with Israel in Syria. Iran is completely out, Hezbollah is completely out, and some of the European countries are trying to formulate. But this is only going to lead into two of the options. One is a federal system, because the Kurds are not going to accept anything less, and they have a big military power constructed and built by the US to counterbalance these Islamists or the Kfiris. And the Druze are not going to accept less than a federal system. They are armed and supported by Israel in Sweden. And now the Alawites and the Christians, after the massacres, they have come to the conclusion, let's say, that they cannot live with these, they say, monsters. So if the Balkanization is a physical aspect, I think it has to precede with a psychological acceptance for Balkanization, that the people should agree that, okay, we cannot live any longer with each other. We're different. We're not Syrian people. I'm a Druze, you're a Kurd, I'm a Sunni, you're a Shia, I'm an Alawite, and everyone creates its own canton. And this is where the country is headed. So best case scenario, you see a centralized government in Damascus, a weak one, and then you have Kurdish, Druze, and Alawites having their decentralized regions. Or this goes further if these massacres continue, because it is happening in different ways. Like it's not only about killing people. You have hundreds of thousands of Syrians kicked out of the public sector because they're privatizing the Syrian economy. And this means hundreds of thousands lost their jobs and they have no job opportunities. And now this political persecution and the killings happening. So people are on the edge. So I think that the worst case is going to be divided. And then in the coastal cities, Russia will take over in cooperation with Israel. Both agree that Turkey should stay out of the Mediterranean or the eastern bank of the Mediterranean. And the Russians are securing their interests there as well in cooperation with the US and with Israel.
Oh man, there's so much to focus in on, and let's see how far we can get. The first thing I wanted to focus on, and I myself, as a cultural and social psychologist, in relation to geopolitical events, always find this very, very important and so incredibly enraging, is that again you see that the West comes somewhere, the West intervenes and manages to divide human beings up along all these sectarian and ethnic lines. They just so love a world where we all bloody hate each other. It's so incredibly frustrating. I mean, all these groups in Syria, all these groups in West Asia in general that were just so, how can you say that? So good at living together, in living in a plural society where people are neighbors, maybe even intermarry sometimes of different groups, and nobody found it a big deal. You go together to school, everything, your friends. And of course, the Western imperialists come there and make everybody hate each other, cut up the whole society into ethnic groups. The whole idea of nation state was created by the West to tie people's ethnicity, people's almost people's biology to a piece of land. It's
Yes.
such a messed up idea, you know. And I think that I'm so incredibly enraged and disappointing and hurt that another beautiful country in West Asia is falling to that terrible system of Western imperialism. And my question in that regard is also, why do you think it is so easy? Why do you think the West is so successful in dividing people up? You told me yourself, like in the beginning or when you grew up, you had a very plural society. You guys often did not even ask what is their religion or their background. And suddenly you're in a society where everybody is attacking each other, and people are fleeing, Christians are fleeing, and all that kind of stuff. And my question is, what do you think, why the West is so successful in this, and why are we not able as anti-imperialist people, whether we're in West Asia or anywhere else, like ourselves? You're in Europe, I'm in Asia. Why is it so difficult to buffer ourselves against that? And especially in your country, Syria, I would like to know, what do you think? Why is the West so successful in destroying psychologically that harmony that people had before?
That's a very good question. And to be honest with you, we have to go back a little bit in history. Syria, as a nation state, it never existed until the independence in the 40s. So before that, you had 400 years of Ottoman occupation or Ottoman control, and then you have the French, and each side basically supported different factions, and they always turned one group against each other. Under the Ottoman Empire, the Alawites went to the mountains. The Maronite went to the mountains because of fearing this persecution. And then the French come, they turn the Druze and the Alawites against the Sunnis, and then they put them in the army. Look, it's a construct of a long time of divide and conquest. And each of the empires who passed through this region, they try to divide the people and turn them against each other so they can control. But the West is particularly successful because the West is the empire. And the West has the means to impose its will and wishes. And they have the money, they have the press, the media, and they have the guns. So imagine the CIA alone had the budget of $1 billion per year to give to the so-called rebels, right? So the Syrian army, as a state institution, they didn't have the $1 billion per year to buy equipment. And those are being sent to unorganized, chaotic, barbaric groups. So what can you imagine if you dump all this money, including money come from Saudi Arabia and Qatar, into the hands of this type of people? Like every country, people really need to understand. Like in the United States, in Germany, in France, you have 3% psychopaths. In every country, you have some level of psychopathic people. And if there is a country A giving all this support, media support, logistic support, intelligence support, and military support to this 3% of the psychopaths, they could wreck the entire country. And then you incentivize you give the incentives for the people to join such groups. You make it like it's a holy war. And then you need the religious support. So here comes the role of countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia with their, I would say, mercenary religious figures. And every Friday they could say whatever the leadership wants them to say, right? If it's if they say this is a holy war against an infidel regime in Syria, then you have thousands of people around the world are motivated to go to Syria. So I blame the West for what happened in Syria because this is their regime change project. And I mean, they have been talking about it for a long time. Israel has been talking about it for a long time. But also the regional countries, they have come to the realization, it seems, in the past decades, And this is something that I'm receiving, like I received calls from the UAE, contacts with very good political ties in the UAE, telling me, in short, like the US is the dominant power, and you guys have chosen to face this dominant power without having basically the might to succeed. And you don't have a superpower in your back. It's not the Soviet Union like in the past, which is supporting anti-US forces. This is Russia. Russia has very good relationship with Israel, and now they're reconciling with the US. So you put yourself in a very vulnerable situation. Now, I'm not saying Syria took the wrong decision, but Syria definitely didn't immunize itself first against the ideas that were being, day and night, they're talking about it on Al Jazeera, for example. Massacres are happening in Latakia. We're watching the videos. Like, it's not like we found somewhere. It's these militants posting the videos themselves, killing entire families. Then you turn on Al Jazeera and they say they are coming after Assad regime remnants, right? So you have the public perception is being constructed by very influential channels with great ties with the US.
So you could, sorry for interrupting, Kevork. So you could almost say it's the same idea as what is happening in Israel Palestine, where the media is saying they're chasing Hamas.
Like in Yemen, for example, the other day when we read the signal messages, and this is something I wrote yesterday. I just want to quote myself because I don't want to miss the point. I said, if the US can detect someone on the hit list in Yemen and can follow him going to his elite girlfriend's home, why doesn't the US bomb him on his way? Why do they drop a bomb on the entire residential building? Am I asking the wrong question? If the US can detect someone on the hit list in Yemen and can follow him going to his elite girlfriend's home, why doesn't the US bomb him on his way? Why do they drop a bomb on the entire residential building? Am I asking the wrong question? It's coming from the West. I would argue and say if the US is going to commit a crime, then at least you can limit the collateral damage of the civilian casualties. But this shows the complete recklessness and carelessness about you're going to kill one person and then you drop 1 ton of explosives over a building, which means you are minimum killing 50 people to kill one person. And this is not only a human decision. You may well know that in Gaza, when they weaponize the AI to kill alleged Hamas operatives, every junior Hamas operative or anyone linked or affiliated to, which we don't know what's the definition to affiliated to, right? Hamas. You could be the cousin of someone who is a junior, probably member of the political bureau of Hamas. You could get killed by Lavender and they could pick you. And in order to kill you, they are allowed to kill 10 civilians in the discourse of killing one person. If you're a senior, they're allowed to kill 100 people in the discourse of killing one senior Hamas member. This is horrendous. Like, there is no time that this was public. Like in Iraq, definitely they did. In Libya, definitely they did. But it wasn't as public as it is nowadays, and it is not as honest. Like, it's not like this Palantir or these AI systems are secret. They're in public. We're reading about it. They are publishing about it and saying this software can kill 100 people. So they can drop a bomb over a tent and kill 50, 100 civilians if they suspect there is a Hamas member. And this gives you a glimpse about how do they see us in the region. Like, what is a human life?
I was just gonna say, Kevork, I was just gonna say that this is also something that is all pretty much only possible in people in West Asia, and not just Arabs. Just most people are all over West Asia. They don't really care if it's Arabs or not, but in the mind, of course, of the Westerners, it's often Muslims and Arabs and that kind of stuff. But I don't think there has been any group of people besides the people in West Asia who have been completely disconnected from any moral concern. I mean, what we have seen happening during Israel's attack on Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Palestine, and the total, total disregard for human life, dropping bombs on residential areas. We're talking about nascent to nuclear bombs. I mean, these I've seen videos of bombs that were so extreme, and these were just dropped on residential areas. But we're also talking about open rape and sexual violence on camera, um, sniping of children, terrorist attacks by governments, and I'm just baffled, but I also realized this is the culmination of many years of cultural programming to not see people in that region as human beings. I mean, for the decades that I grew up in my society, and it's next to your country where you live now, Germany, I come from the Netherlands, the normalcy of just dehumanization of people in West Asia, the culmination of that is what we see today. And that will be, I think, also a bridge for the future. It starts with people in West Asia. It starts with the Syrians, the Iraqis, the Lebanese, the Palestinians. It starts with that. That's when it normalizes in people's minds, and then it will transfer to everybody who is an enemy. And before you know, the dark ages that we live in now are even darker than they are now, and we are already getting there. And that brings me also to Germany, by the way. It reminds me of one of the politicians in Germany, and who said that. What did she say already? She
I
said
know
that
what
if
about the
yeah,
hospitals, right?
yes, he said that if the terrorists are hiding in public places, the citizens lose their protected status. That's what she said. And you can only say that when it's about people in West Asia, man. Because the first thing the press should have said to her is the following. So if there are neo-Nazis hiding in Berlin, enemies of neo-Nazis, let's say, for example, Russia, can drop bombs on citizens in Berlin. I mean, how would she reply to that? But you can only say that because you dehumanize people in West Asia. And I think what we see today is just the culmination of that intense dehumanization. Sorry, I just wanted
No, Karim,
to
I would say
yeah.
two things about this. One is, I think it's a combination of complete idiocy, illiteracy from Baerbock's side, because if she knew anything about international law, she wouldn't say that. I will explain now. And secondly, it's complete dehumanization of the people as well. And this is where this so-called left in Europe come from. It's a rotten imperialist idea. The left has never been like this. Like I come from a left background, but I don't find
Me too. Me too.
any left-wing party except for Zara's party on the foreign policy level, which they didn't succeed to manage to be in the parliament recently, who are anti-imperialist or anti-war. Now the left is about exporting their values, their culture, but this is also an imperialist idea, because this also indicates that your culture and your idea and your language is better than others. So you want to export your political system, you want to export your vision. Baerbock, when she said the public places lose their immunity, that's completely untrue under international law. And I had to go and check the Geneva Convention and go into these sub clauses and articles. If there is a Hamas member, a fighter in the hospital continues to have its immunity. If a Hamas member is on the top roof of the hospital and firing missiles from the hospital, then here comes the gray zone. Then you, as a military, you have to assess the outcome of the strike and the damages that you could cause. If there are 500 civilians in the building, you don't bomb the building to kill one Hamas member. So even if there is a Hamas member on the top roof and firing a rocket, which it didn't happen, still the hospital has immunity. Unless the hospital is empty and it's not functional, not operational, there are no patients inside, there are no refugees inside, and it was being used in acts of hostilities, only then. So Baerbock doesn't know what she is talking about. And however, in Germany, when she talks about something like this, who objects her? Who says, no, you're wrong? Literally no one. But when she says something wrong about Ukraine, they oppose her. They say, like, no, this is not true. We are anti-war, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to Palestine, everybody agrees. And imagine like entire elections in the US and in Germany happened in a similar time frame, right? The Republicans in the US, they had the most fatal argument against Biden, and that is his support for the genocide of the Palestinians. And they never used it once as a card against Biden. In Germany, the opposition parties, they had the best card to play against the Social Democrats, the Greens, for supporting the genocide. Not even once they used this card. What does that tell you? It's not a multi-party system. It's a uni-party system when it comes to certain cases. So I'm not someone who believes in political change in these countries, and it's not going to come. Therefore, you either adapt to it and you be part of it, or if you're going to reject it, you will find a hard time to continue living in a place like this. So my advice for people is, now that I'm reading lots of news, EU is preparing for the people, you need to have 72 hours of groceries at home because you never know in 5 years Russia is going to attack us. They're preparing the people for such scenarios. And fear is what drives people's behavior. You know better than myself. And like, you can lock people down in their homes for weeks if you tell them something very serious is outside and it's going to attack you and kill you. So they're preparing the people psychologically for the increase of budget, the defense budget, right? They couldn't do it under the environment claims. They couldn't do it under the corona. Now they will increase the expenditure by a lot, like 3% or 2% of the GDP. Where is this money going to come from? Serious question. Like, if this country is being deindustrialized and the economy is not doing well and the companies are leaving the country, so where are they going to bring the money? It's from the pockets of the people, because what they do basically, through inflation, they finance the budget, but the people don't know that the inflation is like boiling a frog. They do it slowly until you don't feel that there is a heat, until you're burned. But if they introduce a tax and let's say, oh, we have to tax the people 2% more for our defense budget, people will say, no, I don't want to pay tax. But if you go to buy your groceries and you're paying 10 euro extra every time you buy a grocery, you will not feel it. This is how they will do it. And I truly think that Europe is going to be militarized, less democratic, and people who sound alarm about this, if they're coming to the apartments now in 6 a.m. in the morning because of a tweet you made, of a meme you posted on X, they will come very soon to your apartment because you objected the war, and they will say this is a national security issue, and they will lock you up. So if you live in Europe, I think you have to be prepared for such a scenario. Otherwise, you could be shocked to the extent that they could go in order to impose their agenda on the people. And these people, rest assured, they're not serving the people, they're serving the people who put them in power. And their hands are cuffed, whether they believe in what they're doing or not, because I don't know. I don't know about yourself, but when I listen to some of the statements coming from Kaja Kallas or Baerbock or Ursula von der Leyen, it's like, do they really believe what they're saying, or is it someone sending them the scripts to say, because it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And to get back to what you just said, these people are not left. You know, I consider myself a left wing, and there is no left in Europe. All these people, such as Baerbock, but also in the Netherlands, Labour, the Labour Party, and we also have the Green Party. These are all. These are they portray themselves as left, but they are just capitalist, right wing imperialist parties, and our societies have the past decades since the neoliberalization of our societies have really effectively destroyed the real left. There is no more real radical old school socialist Marxist left anti-imperialist leftism in Europe anymore, and that's why I always say we should even stop calling them left, because it's an insult to real leftism. You know what I mean? And what you're saying about that scary development that we see in the West, actually, I just saw something on Substacks, very shocking. So you heard about the Palestinian guy who was caught by ICE, right? This ICE detention center. I think
Yes.
his name was Khalili,
Hmm.
and um, just now, I see another one. A Turkish PhD student, a young girl, was kidnapped by masked, probably ICE people,
What do you mean
because
by
she
iced? Iced?
ICE, ICE. That is the
Oh.
ICE, the guys from the United States. You know, these immigrant police. They call them ICE.
Ah, okay. I didn't know
So
the
so
name.
Khalili was caught by ICE people. These are these like militarized people who catch immigrants. Very disgusting stuff, like the Stasi, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you call that back in the, that was in Eastern Germany, of course, but like the SS or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Just these fascist goons, and you also had and you actually have a video of it. It's a young Turkish PhD student, and she published an academic article on Israel Palestine. I kid you not. And she was you see it on video. She's caught by strange masked men in how do you call that, these mask like what these criminals always do, like what only that where you only see
The
the eyes.
thieves.
Just
Yeah.
random guys just kidnapping her and pulling her in a car. This is like 1930s crazy Germany fascism, and
Mm-hmm.
it's here, man. We're talking about a university student just publishing an academic article. I'm really Kevork, I'm flabbergasted. What's going on here? You know?
Ali Abu Nami was kidnapped in Switzerland while he
Yeah,
was walking to the conference. They came with a
unbelievable.
van and they kidnapped him from in the street. This is Switzerland. It's not like the United States. The United States has a clear position in favor of Israel, but Switzerland's supposed to be a neutral country. And I mean, it's one thing to not allow a journalist to get into your country on the bogus claims, because Germany does that all the time. Like if somebody is coming to attend a pro-Palestine conference, they say persona non grata, or we have some considerations. They put him back and send back in a plane. But it's something else to allow him to the country and then kidnap him in the street, and detain him for 3 days and then send him back to the US. And this is literally kidnapping a journalist. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be normalized nowadays, that people come to an airport and they confiscate your electronics, they suck your data, and probably install some software in it to spy on you. And I've been reading about this a lot nowadays, that anyone who is coming from a foreign country, not from the US, to the US, they are checking their smartphones, and they are even putting some electronics on the charger that you don't know if this electronic is basically installing any software in your handy, because some of these softwares could be sent to you and you don't need even to open the message. They could send you an SMS or WhatsApp. You don't even need to open the message, and this message is already a Trojan horse, and it is spying on you. So if you are someone who is involved in political activism, academia, I think it's very scary times for these people, like ourselves. Like you're in China, right? And imagine if you want to go back and visit the Netherlands, or you're invited to Germany. I know a professor of history who recently visited Germany, and he hired a lawyer before he landed in Germany so that he follows his case in case he is detained by the police in the German airport, because he has been very vocal in support of the Palestinians and very critical of the German government.
I think I know who you mean.
Yeah,
I think I know who you mean.
imagine like you're even a citizen of Germany and you are scared to land in
Yeah.
your own country.
Yeah.
So imagine someone like myself. I have no one in my back. I'm affiliated to no one. I receive money from no one. And if they detain you or they confiscate your electronics, I don't even have enough money to replace my electronics. Like, so it's very easy to destroy a voice nowadays. So I think moving out to a safer place where you at least have the minimum of having the right to express your opinion. And it's not like we are doing something radical. It's not like we are calling for regime change or burning down the country or supporting rebels, like they do in our countries. We're just voicing our concerns about the policy of a person who is a human being who can hit or miss. So if a politician misses or making a wrong policy, you should have the right to criticize the policy. But they take it very personal nowadays. Like the people like Kaya Kallas and Annalena Baerbock, there are so many politicians in Germany, they sue private individuals because somebody called a politician fat or obese. Like, imagine there is a politician who is a senior in her Green Party, and this is an objective reality. She was obese. I mean, she's 2 times my size. What do you mean? It is objectively, medically, you're obese, and somebody calls you an obese, you get irritated. And then she sued this person called her fat Anexa. Imagine if you go one step further and truly deconstruct the premise of the policy they're pursuing in other regions, how much of irritation that could cause. And I'm with complete humbleness, my friend. Like, if I'm the foreign minister of Germany, I would serve the interests of the German people in a much better way than the current elite. And when I say in a much better way, I mean the national interest of Germany. Where is the national interest of Germany? Is it in supporting a genocide? Is it in installing Al-Qaeda regime? Is it in provoking a war with Russia? Or is it with economic integration, first in Europe and then with the greater Eurasian region, where two rising economies or two rising poles are potential partners? And this doesn't even require you to cut ties with the US. I mean, the US sees Europe now as a liability, and they see the opportunities in the Gulf countries, in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are much more important for them. Imagine the UAE is investing $1.3 trillion in the tech and AI sector in the US. How much money can the European continent invest in the US? The same goes for Saudi Arabia. They're going to buy $800 billion worth of products, including military equipment from the US. So financially, for the US, these Gulf countries are milking cows. Meanwhile, Europe is stuck in this ideological dilemma that they are living in a self-denial that this continent is not as it used to be 10 years ago. And there is a serious demographic problem here, there is a serious economic problem here, and there is a serious ideological problem vis-a-vis China and Russia. Like, what has China done to Europe for Kaya Kallas to come and say, like, how can we pretend that we want to fight China if we can't defeat Russia? What the actual fuck is that? Why do you want to defeat China?
I've always said, I totally agree with you, Kevork. I've always said, and I've discussed this with Peter too, and we've discussed this with other guests too. I think we also discussed it with Tariq Cyril Amar, that there is a problem in Europe and we don't talk about it enough. Europe is a colonial culture deeply rooted in white supremacy. What does that mean? That means that Europe still has that kind of stupid connection with the United States. It feels as if it's colonial, ethnic, white brother, while it's way better for Europe to focus on the East. Let's say China. China is also willing to work together with Europe, but Europe rather completely destroys itself for the United States than to say, you know what, the United States is destroying us. We're going to look eastwards. They just can't do it. It's not in their mindset. They can't connect with people in West Asia. They don't care about Palestinians. They don't care about Syria. They don't care about Iraq. They can't deal with the Chinese. They cannot even deal with the Russians. It's like 500-600 years of colonialism has made the European, and I'm generalizing, not all Europeans, but especially the political classes and the wealthy and the elites, have made them just completely unable to bind and connect themselves with the rest of humanity. So they rather destroy themselves.
That's why I say when their decisions and statements do not make any sense, because I'm purely talking about interests. So what is the interest of Europe? If we see what is the biggest threat for European continent, right? One of the threats is the declining population. So they have to import people from outside. But at the same time, this is causing the rise of right-wing groups, and they don't want for the right-wing groups. And there's so many clashes happening here. Now, China is investing in Africa. The biggest investments of China is in Africa. They're building infrastructure, water dams, electricity, schools, universities, roads, like alternative energy, all sorts of things, right? Ports. And this creates job opportunities for the Africans. And the African population has grown in the past decade or two, I think 10% more than Europe. And now they will be like 5 times more than the size of the population of Europe until 2100. So if there is, without or were it not for the Chinese investments, where will all these people go? To Europe, right? Because where is the money, where is the job opportunity? People will head towards these economies. So China is doing a big service basically for Europe by building Africa. So why do they want for the Chinese experience to fail? It's like, are you self-suicidal or something? I don't know. Why do you want for the Chinese model to, like, what's the purpose behind it? China is building and showing to the world that there is an alternative approach for buying leverage over the countries. You don't need to drop a bomb. You can build them, schools, and people around the world have hearts. And it's the first thing you could do is to buy the hearts of the people by improving their livelihood. Why do you have to steal, like cooperate? This is the problem, You mentioned the mentality in Europe, and I think this is true because I meet with politicians here in Germany. And one time I was sitting with a politician, and he's from the center-right party, Free Democratic Union. And he told me his wife is Ukrainian, and they were talking about the tragedies in Ukraine and how Putin is bad and how he's dropping bombs over the hospitals and schools, etc. And I listened to and I sympathize with it, until the end. When they finished the conversation, like 10 minutes, I just listened. I asked him, so what do you think about what Israel is doing to the Palestinians in Gaza? Because what you literally told me is like 10 times falling in Gaza. And he said, no, with Israel, he said, even if Israel is committing genocide, we have to stand with Israel, literally. So I already got my answer. And this is not coming from, let's say, a far right or the left party. It's a center-right party. And it's not like they have a big size here, but if this is what the center right thinks about the people in the region, then if one day Israel kills me, just for an argument's sake, I don't think he will cry a river about it. So that's why I feel like I truly will hope that this political system in this country would really give some humanity to us, or to recognize that we are humans as well. But I don't believe that this is going to change. This is something different than people think that if you vote, if you go and participate in elections, things will change. No, you can choose right or left or center, do whatever you want. They're going to change about certain things in the country itself, but when it comes to the strategic issues, there is a consensus. And even if this consensus doesn't exist, they will force this party to accept the consensus. So there are some political parties come from the opposition and they get smeared a lot. But then they start, normalizing their approach more. So they have to come closer to the mainstream parties. And then you see the treatment in the press vis-a-vis this party changes. And they start treating the politicians of this party in a different way, because you came 1, 2, 3 steps closer to the establishment. As much as you go away, you will be kicked out. Like during the elections in Germany, I swear to God, I received probably over 100 advertisements on X, hit pieces against Sarah Wagenknecht, who leads the Bundeswehr coalition, and they failed in these elections. But this tells you why I'm as a resident in Germany, and who is paying these advertisements, because those are paid posts, and why only against this party. And it's not like I agree with Zara's approach, for example, towards Palestine, because they keep talking about the two-state solution, which I believe is a fantasy nowadays. But at least they're calling for arms embargo for Israel, right? And this is important. And they're the only party who were smeared completely. Putinists, they are pro-Hamas, this and that. And then I kept blocking this advertisement. Like I say, why I'm seeing this advertisement? I don't want to see this advertisement. Show less from this advertisement. I'm even teaching the algorithm not to give me this advertisement. Every time I log into my Twitter X account, and then this another advertisement against her comes. So they have the financial tool to finance lots of things. And the money, what is money? If me and you nowadays agree that this has a value and this is a $1, if me and you, we agree, we can deal with each other, right? Money is nothing. It's just print in the thin air. But they're the ones who centralize this money, euros, dollars, and they have imposed this formula on the rest of the world. Therefore, it has more value. And people deal with these currencies. But if they print it, so they have the power to funnel lots of money. And this also buys, since we're speaking about the Middle East, because I'm from West Asia, I feel like entitled to criticize also the people in West Asia, right? It's not like I'm coming from the West and I'm patronizing them. No, but lots of colleagues of mine, whether they were in my university, school, in business, they accepted to work with imperialists. They accepted to collaborate with them against their country. So the sense of patriotism also, I think this was Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam back then. He was a revolutionary figure. He said, if you want to corrupt a revolution, then funnel money into this revolution. And this is what happened in Syria, right? Like, yes, they were revolutionary people who want to change. But once money comes and you funnel lots of money, we're talking like USAID spent $18 billion in Syria.
That reminds me of the quickly jumping in, that reminds me of the conversation we had actually, Kevork. Remember where I said that the structural power of the United States with dollar hegemony, where it just receives money like water,
Yeah.
makes the United States so ridiculously powerful to everywhere do anything it wants. USAID, fund terrorists, fund vessels, fund military bases. It's crazy. You know how to fund media systems.
And
It's
this is what the
crazy how to
USAID
deal with
did.
that.
You're talking about $18 billion into, yes, some of which goes to humanitarian work, but the rest is for radio stations, social media account journalists, activists, and even the salaries of some of the Jolani's gangs. So imagine they set up a so-called non-governmental organization in Syria as a front. They say it's a humanitarian. They give this organization $100 million, and 9 million of it, so 9% of it has gone to the leadership of Al Qaeda. It's coming from USAID. They knew about it, but they did it. And most of this money also went to these journalists. So, like I talk about equipment. I mean, how do we create content at the end? You need equipment, right? If I have my handy now or my mobile in my hand and my hand is shaking like this and the quality is not good and the volume is, nobody watches that. So they give them all the best cameras and all the best equipment and all the best laptops, and this is money. This is money. Like I remember in 2011, 2012, when my colleagues in the university started collaborating with the US, like all of a sudden, smartphones change, expensive cameras in their hands. So what is happening? Who started funneling all this money? Therefore, when I blame the people, and not me, I don't mean all the people, but they're influential people who collaborated. They made lots of money. So it's the sense of loyalty to the country or to the people is very, very important, that the regimes in the region or the governments in the region also failed. Like I myself, I believe in something. If you, my friend, you're sitting in your home and you ate a sandwich of shawarma now, do you throw the leftovers in the floor while you're eating in your home? No, because it's your home. You keep it clean. But when we talk about the country, for decades, these governments couldn't teach the people that their country is their home, their bigger home. So once you eat, you cannot really just throw everything in the streets. So there was this self of disrespect to the streets. So why would you defend a place that is dirty, that is unorganized, that is chaotic, etc.? So there is one element that these governments couldn't really teach the people how to feel home when you're in your country. And this is something that could happen through education, through curriculum, through media. But these countries, unfortunately, including Syria, they have weaponized the press only for the sake of the government, keeping the government intact, right? Okay, all media outlets are doing the same thing. For BBC, CNN are doing the same thing for their empires. But at the same time, you can have one aspect of your press basically for the sake of the people, including telling them, like, my friend, my work and your work from our home is more important and influential than an entire ministry of information in Syria about the Syrian war. Like, there is a complete lack of understanding how to deliver a message to the people. Like, they treat the people like they're idiots. They disrespect their intellect. So last time when I was in Syria, someone important asked me, like, I'm so amazed. How did you make it on Syrian analysis? And I was like, I think because I'm independent. If there was anyone, any sponsor, any political party, anyone having a say in my work, it will not succeed. The best thing is that I'm completely independent from people like yourself in Syria, and I don't receive any money from you guys, because then you will dictate the approach and how to talk. No, I know how to talk to the American people better than you do. And that's why none of the Syrian media outlets even came under sanctions. They didn't even take them out of the satellites because they're worthless. Nobody watches them. But on the other side, there are articles after articles about me, basically calling me names and saying this is a radical right-wing person spreading conspiracy theories. And I'm not that person. And I know I'm not that person. And at the beginning, it hurt me and it affected me. But now, okay, words. What do you want to say more? What do you have more? Right, fascist, neo-Nazi, radical links, left, he's a communist, he's okay, say whatever you want. My work speaks for itself. So I truly salute you also for dedicating this time to create content. And people need to understand, like the content you create or I create, it is not like it doesn't bring much of financial profit. Like if you go and work for any mainstream press, you will make 3-4 times more money there. So the motivation is not money here, definitely. I have goodwill to the people. And when I see what happened in Syria and I start speaking about Ukraine, I gained lots of enemies among Ukrainian people, including people that I know here in Berlin, and they cut ties with me. But I was so honest and genuinely wanted them not to pass through this experience because they were just being used as a pawn in this conflict. And this was not their war. This was a war between Russia and NATO, and they were in the middle. And when I told them you cannot win this war unless there is a direct intervention from the NATO side, and the direct intervention of the NATO side means World War III, which I don't think there is so much insanity to start World War III, which could blow up the entire universe with thousands of nuclear weapons. It's just like, it's logic. Mathematically, you can't win. Manpower, you can't win. Equipment, you cannot win unless this foreign intervention, which means World War III. Logic. But people, you mentioned how people are fooled in Syria. People are fooled in Ukraine, and those are not Middle Easterners. You remember how many times they told us about these game changer weapons in Ukraine? This time, khalas, like the howitzers and the tanks and the and the Taurus and the air defenses and the F-16, every one of them was a game changer. And now Ukraine has no choice. It doesn't even have a choice. Every day they delay a peace agreement or a ceasefire agreement now with Russia, they lose more territory.
But US imperialism is winning again, man.
Yes, US won in Ukraine and Russia won in Ukraine. The people who lost the most are the Europeans, and they still are living in denial. It's like they're doubling down on the same approach. It's like insanity to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. And then these earth minerals with trillions of dollars in Ukraine, it's going to fill the pockets of the US. Definitely the Russians are going to have 30% of it because they occupied a lot in the east. And Chinese are also benefactors of this because they will definitely have access to the Russian annexed parts in order to get the lithium or any earth minerals needed for their tech. But China, in this case, and this is very important, they were the only serious player offering mediation to end the war from the beginning. Although China, if you see it from a realistic or opportunistic lens, China is buying leverage in Russia. It is Russia who needs the Chinese markets now, especially with the gas and the products that they are exporting because of the sanctions. And see how many articles were written in the Western press about Xi Jinping is going to be the guy who knocks out Putin. But this is because they think from a Western perspective. They think that because in the West you shake hands with the leader and then they kill him, like they did with Gaddafi and with Saddam Hussein. They think the culture and the norm in the East is the same, and that's not true. I would bet on my life if Xi Jinping would turn his back on Putin. There is the honor and the in a relationship in the East, especially in people like China and Russia, you have a gentleman agreement. If I tell you today, Karim, Khalas, next week we will meet and we're going to discuss this and that, right? I don't need this to be written on a paper. There is a gentleman agreement. And these people work in the old school way. And it's easier to deal with in an old school way, especially among these superpowers, than the this continuous suspicion. Like Xi Jinping talked to Justin Trudeau, and the next day he leaked the conversation to the press. And he was bashed by Xi Jinping, telling him, "Why are you leaking? This is a private conversation." So there is no honor, and they don't keep their words. So, and this is not only exclusive to the political elite, but also the so-called academic and intellectual. I have met countless of people working for these think tanks in the US, including from this John McCain Institute for blah, 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 Institute for War Studies, all these people. I met them in Beirut.
Propaganda machines.
Brother, the thing is, I know that they're propaganda machines. They know that I know that they're propaganda machines. However, they treat me like I'm an idiot. You know, like they're telling you what, you see that cliff? Maybe if you walk there, you'll find the rainbows, you know, and you're like, you think I'm an idiot? Like, why are you sending me to the cliff? I will fall and my country will be gone. But they're talking to me like I'm an idiot, and they're talking to other Syrians like they're idiots. But some people buy that, and some people accept it out of financial profit. I come to the conclusion that some people are born in a different way. Like born, when they see something wrong, they can't stay silent about it. And some people just say, you know, in Arabic, they say, they say, like, you look at the wall and search for, like, don't look into other people's eyes or into other people's women, for example. So just look at the wall and walk. So they're passive completely. And some people cooperate. For me, I lose respect for people, including my colleagues in the university, when I see them participating in these conferences and talking, like, you don't find a difference between a researcher in the John McCain Institute, which is in Washington, D.C., than a Syrian who was born and raised in Syria, and then he's cooperating with them. It's the same literature, the same words, the same context, the same script. So the idea that people cannot be programmed is not true. People can be programmed, or people can accept to be programmed, and whether it's Syrian or American or European, they can just talk the same things and repeat the same things and believe what they're saying. But they can't fool us, you know?
Absolutely, Kevork. You say exactly what I've been discussing with Peter for many times. Peter and myself, we're professors here in China, and we're in that academic world. And I've actually had the discussion a while back with Peter, even on our channel. I said most academics are just stenographers for the powerful. I kid you not. These people are voluntarily just regurgitating these stupid political talking points. To give you an example, we had a presentation by an academic a while back who came to our university to give some seminars. And it was all about sanction regimes because the United States wanted to spread human rights around the world. And there were sanctions posed on Iran and sanctions posed here and there because the United States wanted the people to be more free and this and that. And I was just, my chin was almost on the table. I was like, what? I can't believe you spend most of your days studying politics and geopolitics, and that is the conclusion you get to in a world where not ever have so many people been killed than by a nation like the United States. And it's just, absolutely baffling to me. So the first thing I did, I was raised my hand and I said, if the person had read the study by Jeffrey Sachs that
Hmm.
showed that 40,000 people died in Latin America, Venezuela, due to sanctions. Yeah, that these are he agreed the fact that that happens, but he said I refuse to believe that politicians are such psychopaths that they do that on purpose. And I said to him, I said I genuinely believe they are such psychopaths, and
No, but
that is
sorry,
why
this
we
is
are seeing an ongoing genocide for 1.5 years,
yes.
and none of these psychopaths are trying to stop it.
I will
Yeah.
send you a document when we finish this conversation. You can add it later to your graphics. And this is a leaked document from Serbia in the 90s. And when they imposed sanctions on Milosevic back then, and regardless of, I'm not talking about the political position of Milosevic, but the purpose of the sanctions. So there is a leaked CIA document speaks about this, and they unclassify it later. So basically, they say that the purpose for it was to create resentment against Milosevic in among the people. So, like this impoverishing the people, the aim for it is to demoralize the people, and then they would rise against their own government. And in Syria, this was one of the factors for the regime change. I mean, people at the end were like, if you fight 14 years and the outcome is misery and poverty and you can't afford anything, basically you don't have you're demoralized, you will not fight. So, and this was the reason for it. And this is what one of the Pentagon officials, her name is Strul, you can also search this. She's talking about the sanction regime and what it aims for. I think her name is Diana Strul or something. She
Yeah,
was in the DOD.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly,
so
exactly.
so they know what they're doing exactly. And but the real question is, my friend, because we speak at the beginning, we spoke about what right the US has to bomb Yemen, what right the US has to impose sanctions, because sanctions are illegal, and those are called not sanctions because sanctions mean like you committed an unlawful act, so there is a legal sanction against you approved by the UN. But this is not the case. Those are unilateral, coercive measures, and they're illegal under international law. So if we're going to talk about rules-based international order, okay, let's do that. Let's do that. But I came to the conclusion that it's worse than a jungle, because in a jungle people don't animals don't eat each other for dominance. They eat each other for food when they're hungry. But humans can become worse.
Well, not just
During,
humans, just certain. I'm not afraid to say it, Kevork. Just certain cultures,
yeah,
because like I said, all human beings do depravities. All human beings do bad stuff. All human beings had wars and domination. But I think Western society and the global nature of imperialism is uniquely evil in this world, because it co-evolved with a culture of profit and capitalism, which draws the worst out of people, really the worst. I mean, it's not so surprised that China is able to become as powerful, economically successful as the United States without military bases, without imperialism. In other words, it's a different system where you get social welfare. But the Western imperialist system is the whole world needs to live in abject poverty, destruction, hell, for the West to have its wealth and profit, and in particular for the upper class in the West, because the poor in the West are also often forgotten. So we have a unique system of absolute selfishness, psychopathic selfishness. We have a culture where the psychopaths have won. They have won. It runs every layer in society. That kind of selfish individualism that is very prominent in capitalism has become our cultures. And to give you an example about that kind of like where we were talking about, oh, I don't believe that they are this that the guy that academic said, I don't believe that they are psychopathic on purpose, that they are this psychopathic, and I've always said, and I've had the discussion with Peter as well. These people, these academics, but also a lot of politicians and even geopolitical analysts always say, yeah, the United States should stop waging all these wars because every single war they lose. And I always say the United States does not lose wars. All these wars, every war that they call a failure, they say, oh, Vietnam was a failure, they lost. Iraq was a failure, they lost. Libya is a failure, they destroyed the country and they got nothing. No, 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 no. Or even Ukraine also, they say they lost. They don't lose. The United States would not make the mistake to over and over and over again spend 20 years of its time putting its military in a country if it was a loss.
Yes.
What the United States is doing is making profit for the military-industrial complex. It's making profit because it gets cheap resources. It's successfully instigating divide and conquer, so it completely wrecks these countries. And it's just completely destroying any sense of development in these societies. And that's the whole reason for that kind of imperialism. Iraq's destroyed, Libya's destroyed, Syria's destroyed, Palestine's destroyed, Afghanistan is destroyed. You're not, Vietnam was destroyed. Ukraine is destroyed. You're not gonna tell me that is mistake after mistake. The United States didn't lose over there.
No.
They destroyed these countries on purpose, and they got a lot of profit out of that stuff. This is intentional psychopathy. This is part of the system.
If this is exactly your point is 100% correct, because people think that the US is repeating mistakes, and I think when you repeat the same mistake between brackets over and over again, it's not a mistake, it's a deliberate policy. So you occupy a country, destroy the central government, destroy the army, create a vacuum, create a fertile ground for terrorist organizations, and then you funnel support them ideologically through your allies in the region. So you wreck the country completely, you wreck its identity, you wreck its civilizational value, and by your military posts, you create new social and political realities, and you keep that for a decade or two until it becomes a status quo. And then you leave after leaving all this legacy behind you while you're making profits. So no one in the world can convince me that Afghanistan was lost because they didn't go there to win the war. It was a big money laundering operation with trillions of dollars.
What is winning? That they're standing with white flags and say, hey, we lost and you won. I mean, what is winning?
They revived the opium trade. They blocked the Russians from the Indian Oceans, and then they projected power in Kazakhstan. Like, they did lots of things in Afghanistan that they made trillions of dollars. The purpose was to win. It was a perpetual war. It's a continuous war. And once they were done with Afghanistan, everybody was speculating, so where is the US going to? It was in Ukraine. 2021, and then 2022, the war in Ukraine started. So now that they're withdrawing from Ukraine, or partially, what is going to be the next destination? It's going to be Iran. And this is what, funny enough, I've been accused of being Zionist secretly the past 2 weeks because I criticized Iran. And it's not like I'm someone, I criticize a policy. When I say Iran made a mistake, when the assassinations happened in Lebanon, this was the point where they should have drawn the line. And when in Syria, because this has led into the collapse of Syria. When the Israelis saw the inaction of Iran, you're not assassinating like just a normal person. Killing Nasrallah is a game changer. The Lebanese know, the Iranians know, the Israelis know. So I think that Iran, when the issue has become about direct confrontation with the US, and I'm not blaming them, they have chosen their national security. They took a step back. But my criticism was, if there is an axis and there is a leader in this axis, then the leader leads the axis and not stays in the shadows. And this has been proven to me a few weeks before Assad fell, when an Iranian senior official came to Syria and they asked Assad back then to open a front line, to allow Assad to open a front line to Iran-affiliated groups from the southern part of Syria against the Golan Heights. And the Iranians heard very, I would say, tough words from Damascus, basically telling them, we are not going to open a direct confrontation with Israel. Meanwhile, you are not participating in it. If you are going to increase your participation, then we are open for discussion. But it's not okay to open front lines in different parts while you are not participating in it. It's our country is already wrecked. Like Israel can destroy entire Damascus in one. If they send one squadron of F-35s, they can destroy entire Damascus. So what's their strategy? So Iran didn't want to participate directly in this, and then the killing of Raisi happened, and everything changed in Iran. So now Iran is in front of very, very difficult choice. Like, I don't like to think binary, but please tell me if there is a third option. But Iran doesn't have the privilege now for no war and no peace. They have done it for 30, 40 years now. And the US came and Israel came after every ally of Iran, one by one. The Yemenis are a challenge for them. It's not existential challenge, but the existential challenge is in Iran. So sooner or later, they will come after Iran. And Trump's 2-month notice or letter to Khamenei, it's a big commitment from the American side to give a deadline. So Iran, if they choose the escalation and a deal, then this doesn't
What
only...
kind of deadline? Can you tell us for the audience what kind of deadline?
So Trump basically sent a letter to Khamenei giving him 2 months to answer to the demands of the US for negotiations to start a new deal with Iran. And this doesn't only include the nuclear program, but also the ballistic missile programs and the drone program and the influence of Iran in the region. So if Iran accepts that, this means Iran is already no longer an Islamic revolutionary country, because what was the revolutionary country is based on is the challenging of the US hegemony and dominance in the region. So if Iran accepts it, it's already soft regime change in the country. And if they don't accept it, I think the US and Israel are, their politicians who are psychopathic enough would provoke a war. They would create a false flag attack. They would do anything. They would sink a ship in the Gulf Sea. They would do anything to accuse Iran. And this signal conversation between senior security and military officials by Hexes and Tulsi Gabbard and other officials, which was leaked to the press later. I think this is deliberate leak. This is 101 controlled leak.
Of course.
This is like because it's either the entire American security apparatus have forgotten how smartphones work, basically, or two, which is in my opinion the case, they are giving certain leaks for the public consumption in the United States. They check the public opinion, they prepare the people, because you can't just come in 2 months and say we're going to war against Iran. You have to build up case against Iran. And I think this is the beginning for building up a case against Iran. If an attack happens against Iran, that is definitely going to devastate global economy. So if you ask me, I think Iran will choose compromise with the US, because Iran is not suicidal. It will not put its entire population and its entire infrastructure to be destroyed in a war that Iran can cause a huge damage to Americans and to the Israelis, but with a very, very high cost. So Iranians may choose, to persuade, to choose some of the clauses of the agreement, for example, the nuclear, but not the ballistic and not the drone program, etc. for the hope for better conditions to come in the future. But the future looks like Iran is surrounded by, who are the countries? Like Saudi Arabia, 100% American, pro-American. Qatar. Qataris are the most like manipulative force in the region. They, one side pro-Palestine claims, and then they cooperate with the US. They have strategic bombers in Qatar, like equipped with tactical nuclear weapons. UAE, Bahrain. You have Jordan, you have Egypt, you have Syria, Lebanon. Everything in the region is now pro-American. So my suspicion is they're going to come after Hezbollah one more time. This was not, the case is not over with Hezbollah. They will try to sandwich it between Syria and the Israeli occupation forces. And Hezbollah, what is Hezbollah? Hezbollah are the people. This is something that many people think like, oh, Hezbollah is like some aliens came and they're fighting. No, like if you go to southern Lebanon or you go to Dahieh in Beirut, probably every 3 or every 4 men you meet, one of them is probably Hezbollah. And they're just normal people. Like he has a kebab shop, he has a accessory shop, he's on a motorcycle, he's a taxi driver, you know. And if you talk to people now in Lebanon, among the popular support of Hezbollah, maybe you have different contacts and they're telling you different things, but when I'm talking to my contacts, every one of them say they feel their existence is threatened. So they will, definitely Hezbollah will choose to use these weapons to protect its community, not to open strategic fronts and wars with Israel, even if Iran is attacked, because they're sandwiched. HDS, Nusra are on the borders and they're attacking Lebanon every day, basically. And in the south, you have Israel. So the logical thing to do is to preserve your existence first for Hezbollah. So Iran lost Hezbollah and everyone I talk to, they say we're very disappointed of Iran. They expected a different policy when the bombardment started of Lebanon. Gaza, you see what they're doing in Gaza now. Starvation of the people, cutting all this humanitarian aid. And I think, this is just my conspiracy theory, I might be wrong, that there has been many Arabic countries sending their humanitarian employees to Gaza. Probably some of them are intelligence assets. And now you see these sudden protests against Hamas. And I'm not saying those are not legitimate or illegitimate. I'm just saying that this sudden organized protest in Gaza against Hamas, this plays in the hands of Israel. Now Israel has the public image to show to the people and say, look, the people of Palestine are against Hamas. They want for Hamas to leave. So it's either Hamas to leave or the Palestinians have to leave. And in this case, who do you think is going, if the ethnic cleansing happens in Gaza, God forbid, Jolani is going to be the guy who accepts hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, because he's the only vulnerable leader in the region who is looking for American endorsement. And if he accepts the Palestinians, ethnically cleansed from Gaza, he will settle them in eastern Syria, in Deir ez-Zor, in Raqqa, near the borders with Turkey, near the borders with Iraq, nowhere close to Palestine. And if that happens, you see all these Arabic TV channels, they will make like parties. They will portray him as the savior of the Palestinian people from a genocide, a hero, a nationalist, and a pan-Arabist, and the savior of our Muslim people in Palestine. This is how they will create an image about Jolani if he accepts it. And now they're talking to the Damascus regime about this. And therefore, I don't rule out that all these scenarios together, it could really get out of control. And the conditions they created in Gaza are very inhumane. Like if you're Palestinian living there, you could say, okay, 14 months is enough. I don't want more than less. You know, ceasefire was good, But beyond that, another war, I can't do that, you know. And I see some of the Jazeera journalists in Gaza, they're basically tweeting, saying like, we can't do this again. Like this is the end for us, you know, like halas. So the people psychologically are very, very tired, and asking them to be resilient more than this without any support, basically. Hezbollah stopped its operations, and humanitarian aid is not going inside. It's very scarce. So imagine you could deprive people of food and medication and this and that. You will give them two choices now. It's Hamas. If Hamas leaves Gaza, they will bring Mahmoud Abbas. It's like these clowns. Like Gaza is going to be Israel, basically, just like the West Bank is Israel, but under the cosmetic rule of Fatah or PLO. Or if Hamas doesn't leave, then they will bomb. Like, I have no doubt that they would do anything and everything to kill as many as they can. 700 people in 2 days. Is this serious? Like, if 700 people were killed in the US in 1 or 2 attacks, they would invade any country out of desperation. Any country. But 700 people, it's like fly.
Yeah, and the world has no reply, man. The world has no answer to this depraved, psychopathic violence of Western imperialism, and it's a very hopeless time, man. What is the way out? I mean, yeah, you talk about Iran. I totally get it. Iran is of course in the crosshairs. This is very scary. Iran wants to survive. Iran is of course also a victim of the divide and conquer tactics of the West. I mean, you have a large section of the Iranian population who is very pro-Western, very anti the what is called establishment.
I have not met one Iranian in Germany, and I meet a lot, who was pro the current Tehran ruling. And
yeah.
It is the fact which I go to Persian restaurants. When I go to the gym, most men I socialize with in the gym are Persians, and they're all against Iran. Now, there are many popular support inside Iran, but the diaspora is definitely was the weaker point for the Iranian government.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like I said, it's a very hopeless time. It's a time wherein I get the feeling that the biggest part of humanity is not psychopathic, and that part of humanity has no reply, has no response to, and no efficient response to the depraved psychopathic violence of those in the ruling classes, and that's why the largest part of humanity is singing songs and waving flags in protest, because you do it in a humane way, or writing academic articles. And what are those depraved psychopaths doing? They just kidnap you from the street and throw you into jail, even if you say something nice. And people just have no answer to that. And what is the way out? I have no idea. I think the only way out is if a new culture, a new kind of mindset, indeed, is going to be the center of the world. And I personally think that the only hope we have right now is China. I'm not saying China is perfect. I'm just saying it's the only counterweight to the depraved psychopathic culture that is being run by the Western in the Western Empire. And I find it's a hopeless time, but on the other hand, there are signs indeed of hope. But yeah, there's so many more questions I would like to ask you. I think we could talk on for a long time, Kevork, but we're already at 1.5 hours, so let's continue next time.
Thank you so much.
There's definitely stuff that I've written down a lot, man. I wanted to ask, but I'm gonna keep that Word file.
Next time, if it's possible, also invite Tarek. Tarek is an amazing, hilarious person whom I like a lot. He is intellectual and humorous and funny and very great person. Absolutely. I love him. I learned from
Yeah.
him, so we could have a chit chat also, all of us together.
Yes, great. He's been on our show as well, and I think it would be great to have a combined conversation. That would be absolutely excellent. I'm gonna definitely do that. I'm gonna email you
Yeah.
both together, and we're gonna discuss
Yalla,
together.
let's do it.
hopefully. Inshallah, and then we will continue that conversation next time.
Sure thing. I'm ready.
Thank you, Kevork, and speak
Thank you
to
so
soon.
much, Karim. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.
Salam.